Hello, seniors. This is Mr. Salyer broadcasting from your history classroom. I'm just checking in with y'all, and as well as testing some of the new equipment we're going to be trying to be using in this week and next week. And also in the process, I'd like to try to give you all a little supplement to your history material that you should have received via email. If you'll recall, we've shifted away from the European theater of World War II. We're now looking at what's usually called the Pacific theater, which is to say the conflict between the United States and the Empire of Japan. You all have received material last week pertaining to Pearl Harbor and also the famous Battle of Midway. And then this week, you've received material pertaining to the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I can't emphasize too much that that's a very abbreviated treatment of the Pacific theater, and so part of what I'd like to do in these few minutes is give you a sense of what's in some of these gaps. I guess one way to think about the the Pacific theater is in terms of the different dimensions of the fighting that went on. The one dimension that obviously has already been alluded to with both Pearl Harbor and also with the Battle of Midway is the carrier warfare. In World War II, specifically in the Pacific, aircraft carriers suddenly become the preeminent warship. In the previous conflicts, certainly in World War I, the battleship was the foremost ship of the various navies of the world. That changes sometime in the 1930s in the lead up to World War II with the improvement of air technology. There becomes the development of these things called aircraft carriers, which in effect mean that naval commanders have mobile air bases at their disposal. And so really fighting a naval war amounts to trying to get your aircraft carriers where you want them and to get the enemy's aircraft carriers either to retreat or perhaps to destroy them. And so that, obviously, again, if you've read material about Midway, you can get a sense of what a lot of these carrier battles that went on were about. They were about achieving air superiority over the seas. A second aspect to the war in the Pacific, and that cannot be overstated with respect to the eventual victory of the United States, is submarine warfare. And this is something that it often gets overlooked in histories of World War II. I think, though, given what we've talked about already about submarines, thankfully is kind of set the stage for this. One way of thinking of what happens in World War II is that the United States succeeds in doing what Germany tried to do in World War I to Great Britain. The United States is successful in doing that to Japan. The United States succeeds in doing to Japan what the Germans tried to do to Great Britain, which is to say to establish a submarine blockade which cuts the island off from supplies and cuts off all of the Japanese Empire's trade and makes it impossible for them, or at least very, very difficult for them to reinforce and support the various colonies and military outposts that they've established throughout the Pacific. And this is through the use of American submarines, which go through the Pacific and sink Japanese merchant shipping, sink Japanese transport vessels, and so on. And of course, the Japanese, in retaliation, or in as a kind of countermeasure, they send out destroyers to attempt to sink the American submarines, but they cannot, in fact, lift the blockade. Then the third key idea to think about when you think about what's going on in the Pacific during World War II is something called island hopping, and this pertains less to the U.S. Navy than to the Army and Marine Corps. I mean, of course, the naval vessels are what put these people into where they have to go. So island hopping consists of trying to dismember the Japanese Empire by seizing certain strategically important islands. I guess the reason that it's referred to as island hopping, part of the idea was that the U.S. Army and the Marines did not want to have to seize every last square foot of Japanese territory, of territory that the Empire of Japan had acquired. That would have been prohibitively expensive in life and resources. And so what they would do is maybe seize one island that was seen as of strategic importance, and then skip. If the Japanese controlled, let's say, 3 islands in a row, let's say there were, let's say there's an island here, an island here, and an island here, if y'all can see that. So the idea was they would, the American forces would make a landing on this island, seize it, and there'd be a great deal of fighting, seize this island, and then establish an outpost there. And then instead of seizing the next Japanese island, they would just go around it and then seize this island. And the idea was that this island in the middle is still technically controlled by the Japanese, and there's still Japanese troops and forces there, but they're cut off. They can't be resupplied. Remember, the American submarines are patrolling the waters all around here, and also the chain has been broken, so to speak. And so eventually the Japanese, the forces in the island in the middle would be neutralized and irrelevant, even without any cost in American life. So those are the three key ideas, I guess, you can take away and chew on this week, which is the carrier warfare, the importance of carrier warfare in the Pacific, and those various battles between American and Japanese aircraft carrier fleets. That's one way of looking at the war. Another, again, as I said, is the importance of the use of submarines by the United States. And then last but not least was the island hopping campaign, which allowed American forces to pretty much break up and dissolve the Japanese Empire. So, some things for y'all to think about, and I'll leave you to it. Take care.